Chris. Call the Brushy Creek Regional Utility Authority Incorporated Board of Directors meeting for Wednesday, January 15th, 2014 to order. Secretary, please call the roll.
President Fuller,
Here.
Vice President White, Secretary DeShawn,
Here.
Director Lux,
Here.
Director Whitfield,
Here.
and Director Garcia.
Here.
Well, it looks like we have a change in the delegation from the city of Leander. Congratulations, Jason, on moving up to the secretary position and the voting position. And I'd like to welcome our newest director from the city of Leander, Councilmember Simon Garcia. And Simon, would you like to say something?
No, just glad to be here representing City of Leander.
We're glad to have you. Glad to have you, Simon. Call up item 3, citizens communications. This is a time in the meeting where you can address the board. Would anyone wish to sign up to speak? I see nothing but engineers and attorneys in the audience that all have a vested interest in our proceedings tonight, so we'll move on. Item number 4, approval of minutes. Item 4A, consider approval of the BCRUA meeting minutes for October 16th, 2013.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor of approving the minutes from the October 16th, 2013 meeting, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion carries unanimously. We'll move to item 5, executive sessions. Item 5A, consider an executive session as authorized by 551.071 Government Code and Texas Disciplinary Rules of Professional Conduct to consult with legal counsel regarding issues with the regional water treatment plant and the treated water transmission line segment 1. And item 5B, consider an executive session as authorized by 551.072 Government Code related to the purchase and/or value of real property, to wit, a portion of the Sandy Creek Park from LCRA and a 5.217 acre tract owned by Gary and Kathy Gross. We are in recess for executive session.
Out of executive session.
Okay, we'll move on to resolutions. Item 6A, consider a resolution authorizing the president to execute supplemental agreement number 2 with CDM Smith Incorporated for construction phase engineering services for BCRUA water treatment plant phase 1A in the amount of $368,796.
Thank you, Mr. President. Is this on?
Yeah, it's on.
Oh, got it, okay. This supplemental agreement covers additional work that our design engineers have had to do because of the extended length of the project. The operating committee and I have reviewed it at length and discussed it with the engineers. There are some elements in it that where they're projecting the amount of work, the additional work that will be necessary to fully complete the project. And we're in agreement that it looks reasonable, and certainly the hours that have been worked on the project have been extensive this year by the firm. And I should also add that I believe a significant part of this will be ultimately recoverable, because this is work that was beyond the scope of the original project as it was laid out in the contract with CDM. They've had to be out there and do additional work because of construction-related issues that we've been dealing with. So the amount is appropriate, we believe, and we're hoping that we can recover a substantial amount of it after the project is fully complete.
Very good. Questions, board? Okay. Entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor of approving the resolution as stated in item 6A, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries unanimously. Call up item 6B, consider a resolution authorizing the president to execute a revised engagement letter with Noel, Holcomb, Kothman, and Callahan for legal services.
And, Mr. President, this is additional work that we have requested the firm to do for us on another aspect of the project, the treated water transmission line. And I'll be happy to answer any questions the board might have about it.
Great work so far, and great work with that firm, and Don and Tom, and our staff's integrated. Thank you for everything you're doing with that.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor of approving the resolution as stated in item 6B, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries unanimously. Move on to item 7, new business. Item 7A, consider an update on the status of Phase 2 of the BCRUA water treatment project.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to take a few minutes tonight to brief the board on where I and the members of the OCR in terms of thinking about the scheduling and the timing of Phase 2 of the project, which is basically the deep water intake in Lake Travis and the tunneling that will be necessary to move that water from the intake on Lake Travis to a pump station that will then convey it onto the existing water treatment plant, the BCRUA plant. This project also will be able to pump substantially more water than the plant ultimately will be designed to carry. It's a 106 million gallon a day plant, but the intake will be designed at 140 million gallons a day because it will harden up the ability for both Cedar Park and Leander to take the water that they need to treat at their existing water treatment plants, and will save them a lot of money in terms of having to scramble during these periods of drought. So what I wanted to do is just, I played a little mental exercise with myself over the Christmas break and thought about what are the key issues driving this thing, because in my mind, when I came on board last year, I thought we'd be ready to move forward with Phase 2 maybe by the end of 2014, just based on what I was seeing. And when you think about it, there are really three things driving this, the timing and need for Phase 2. One of them is the rate of growth among the three partner cities in BCRUA. And what does that rate of growth look like? The more people, the more demand on water, and the more need for that additional water and the ability to take it under most conditions. The second thing is basically the drought. What does it look like? How bad is it? How bad is it likely to be? Is it going to get worse? Obviously, there's a lot of professional guessing and hand-wringing that goes into that. And then the last item is how long will it take to actually design and build this thing? It's a very complex project, has a lot of pieces to it, a lot of elements, and it's not something that most utilities or cities do very often. It's a pretty rare project. But we're very fortunate in one way in that we have an example that's right next door to us, and that is the water treatment plant number 4 project that the city of Austin is building. So the OC and I sat down last month with some of the engineers involved in designing the deep water intake portion of the water treatment plant number 4 project. We weren't interested in the plant itself, just what it was involved in their design and construction of the intake system. And what we found was a bit of a surprise. Based on the information we've gotten from them, it looks like the timeline to build Phase 2 will be longer than any of us really thought, even than what Austin thought when they started this process. So that's a significant issue that we had to take into effect as well. The longer it takes to design and build, then the earlier you need to start if you want to end up at the right point. Of course, then the next key is, what is the right point? And it varies for each of the 3 cities that we have here. So what I wanted to show you is I put together a little quick PowerPoint called A Tale of 3 Cities. So apologies to Charles Dickens, but
The best of times and the worst of times.
that's exactly what occurred to me while this is what happens when you let me spend too much time at my place in Mexico. I start playing with numbers, but if you look at this chart, the first chart, at the bottom you'll see the 2010 census numbers for Round Rock, Cedar Park, and Leander. And I know you each think about your city's populations all the time. I think about all 3 of you together. So you can see there we've got about 174,000 people as of 2010. Now, in 2012, that number is pushing up closer to 200,000 based on the latest estimates from the Census Bureau. In 2013, as we stand right now, I haven't heard it from anybody, but my guess is collectively among the 3 cities, your population now slightly exceeds 200,000.
And that doesn't include the ETJ, because
That's right. I'm just talking about the
Yeah.
city boundaries themselves.
we
That's-
provide water to about 80,000 people in Cedar Park when you include our population and our ETJ. So, I mean, it's even a really larger number when you include the ETJ, so.
And it's growing fast. You're growing at a rate, it looks to me like, of about 6% among the, averaged out among the 3 cities. That's very fast rate. And in a lot of ways, you'd look at that and say, that's just not even, that's not sustainable. A community can't do that. So what I'm showing you in here are 3 cities in the Phoenix metropolitan area that are very analogous, I think, or were analogous to your three cities. I've got the city of Chandler. In 1990, it had a population of about 90,000, fairly analogous to Round Rock. The city of Peoria at about 50,000 in 1990, very analogous to Cedar Park. And Little Gilbert, 29,000 in 1990 as compared to about 26,000 in Leander. And what you see on that chart is over a 10-year period to the year 2000 census, those three cities collectively grew from about 170,000 to nearly 400,000 people. That's a fact. That's real. That's not hypothetical. And then in 2010, at year 20 from there, their population was up to nearly 600,000. It is now well over 600,000 among the three. So that's from a base, what we'll call year zero, of 169,000 to a year 20 outlier of right at 600,000. That growth happened. And I would also point out, if you look, between the years 2000 and 2010, there were two economic downturns that area had to deal with. In 2001, immediately post 9/11, the entire Phoenix area's economy shut down, just like it did here, I'm sure, everywhere. We didn't have much housing construction. Everything just slowed down for a year or two. And then in 2008, everything collapsed, and we went into the Great Recession. Few areas were impacted as harshly as the Phoenix metropolitan area was. But in spite of that, if you look at these numbers, they belie what the news reports say. This area kept growing and is still growing. So my point to all this little mental exercise is that growth is a reality in the Austin metropolitan area. There are a lot of similarities, I think, between the Phoenix metro area and the Austin metro area, where it is right now. So what happened in 1990 to 2010, I believe, is starting to happen now here in the Austin metro area. I think it's already started. And where we're going to be in 2020, I've got a question mark there. In 2030, I don't know. But I'm telling you, my guess is you're going to be a lot closer to that 400,000 number in 2020 than what a lot of people would believe right now. I put this here merely to show you that this can happen. This kind of growth does happen and can happen. And I believe in Austin right now, it's more sustainable even than it was in Phoenix. Because frankly, a lot of the construction growth that happened in Phoenix was driven by liar's loans, was driven by mortgage derivative contracts, and driven by investors coming in mostly from out of state, especially California, trying to invest that mortgage derivative money. What's happening here in Austin right now is not being driven by that. Texas has a much more stringent control over its mortgage and banking system than Arizona did and a lot of other states. And the growth that's happening in the Austin area is real. People are moving here not because of construction. They're moving here because of high-tech jobs and other service-oriented jobs that tend to pay pretty well. So the growth in this area is real, and it's continuing. Because of that, that gives me pause in looking at when we need to start the Phase 2 project. It makes me think we better get started sooner rather than later because we're not that far from 2020 right now. So what's driving us? As I just said, I believe the stage is set for very rapid growth in population and along with it increasing water demands in the area. Water demands are being depressed right now because of the drought that we're in, and we're artificially holding down people's use of the water. When the drought finally ends, that demand is going to pick back up. I saw that happen in the Phoenix area in Tempe, where I was at, on multiple occasions. Some people will change their habits permanently as a result of this, but most won't. And the newbies coming in won't even know there was a drought when they get here. So their water use will be more than those who've been through this tough drought that we have. The second driver I've got on here is weather instability. I'm just talking about the situation on Lake Travis. I've gone back and looked over where we're at. Right now, as of this morning, Lake Travis is at 628.4 feet in elevation. That's about 3 feet below where we were in January of last year. And I don't see anything that makes me believe that the overall month of January will be any above 628. There's very little chance of any significant rain between now and early February based on the latest numbers I'm looking at. The other thing I'm looking at is, how common is that to be that low? Lake Travis has not had a January monthly elevation of 628 feet since January of 1964. That's 50 years. 50 years. Before that, 1951 and 1952 saw numbers below 630 feet. So while we've had a lot of rain the last few months around us, as everyone knows, it's fallen in the wrong place. The lakes are still under the NOAA graphs that I looked at today. The drainage basin for the Highland Lakes is still in severe drought. It's right on the edge of severe drought to, a minimal drought. But there's no indication that that's going to change dramatically in the next few months. The current patterns and ocean temperatures in both the North Atlantic Basin and the Pacific Basin, to not get too overly complicated, those things drive the weather that we have here. And right now, the patterns that both of those huge bodies of water are exhibiting is consistent with the patterns that were in existence in the early 50s. So there are some climatologists and weather experts who believe that we may be experiencing a second drought of record, such as happened here back in the early 50s. So we don't know where it's going. We only know that making sure that we can get the water that we have a right to out of Lake Travis is critically important. And our floating intake is, it works under normal conditions. It works even under drought conditions up to a point. But when you're getting into these extreme, unheard of conditions like we've been bouncing close to in the last year or two, then it becomes more problematic. And we need a reliable system and infrastructure to get the water that you all have a right to have out of Lake Travis. And there's a lot of water still in Lake Travis. There's over 700,000 acre-feet there. We just need to be able to get to it, thus the need for Phase 2 and the deep water intake. The last item here, as I mentioned, is we met with Austin's engineers who were involved in water treatment plant number 4 last month. We talked to them about the deep water intake portion of that project. Now, if you think about that project, they're really doing something very similar to what we're doing. It's just they did Phase 1 and Phase 2 at the same time. They're building the first phase of their treatment plant at 50 MGD. Ultimate build-out will be 300. That's about 16% of total capacity. So they have a lot of oversized elements in that project. They built an intake sized for the total amount of water, so it's 300 million gallon a day intake. In our case, in our Phase 1A project, we got 106 million gallon a day ultimate capacity. We built 17 to begin. Again, 16% of total capacity. So now when we get ready to move forward and do the intake, the question becomes, how long will that take? I thought 4 or 5 years. I was wrong. It's more like 7 based on the experience that Austin had with their deep water intake for water treatment plant number 4. We talked about ways that that schedule could be compressed so we could get it done more quickly. And we pushed kind of hard to get them to think about how could you do it. And the consensus was maybe 6 if you're lucky. So think about it. We're in January of 2014. 6 years from now will be January of 2020. 7 years from now will be January of 2021. And with the growth numbers that I indicated and the uncertainty of the levels in Lake Travis and the drought conditions that we have, you put all that together, and that leads to a conclusion that we need to start Phase 2 now. We need to start the deep water intake process now. It's a lot of money. It's a very complex project, and we're going to have to struggle. The 3 cities are going to have to struggle together to make sure that it works with everybody's financial planning. I understand that's complicated, but the real crunch on that will come when it comes time for construction to start. That's where the real dollars will have to be expended. Right now, the key is getting started on the design process so we can make that happen. With that intake in place at the elevation that it will be at, we'll be covered and assured of getting water out of Lake Travis in almost all drought scenarios. And not only for just BCRUA, but also for the existing water treatment plants that Leander and Cedar Park have. And as I said before, if we issue the RFQ now, the request for qualifications, It's still going to be probably mid-2020 to mid-2021 before that intake is complete, and we can all bring you out there and have the ceremonial flipping of the switch. So we got to get moving. That's my bottom line. We have the funds set aside in the construction bond program to start on some preliminary work on Phase 2. The money that we've set aside is enough to cover the purchase of the 2 parcels of land that we're working on right now, we believe. And there should be enough left over in that to at least get this process started. So what I wanted to let you know is that I'm working on putting together the RFQ, and I'll be sending it out within the next couple of weeks. And then within 6 to 8 weeks, we'll have the operating committee and I sit down with all of the firms who want to put together a team to try to tackle this project for us. Let them sit down, give us their thoughts and impressions on the project and who they can bring to bear on this. And out of that, sort through it and decide who has the best team to move forward on this project. Once we do that, we'll negotiate what that's going to look like, and then we'll bring a contract forward to the board for your consideration. Ultimately, it's your call to make. But what I'm saying to you tonight is we need to move forward now on this project. We can't wait till the end of this year. As I said, I realize there are a lot of longer-term financial issues that each of the cities will struggle with in their own way. But if we don't get started on the design on this project now, every day we don't start, we're falling further and further behind. So it's a strongly felt impression that I've developed after looking over all the numbers, running the numbers, looking at the overall situation in terms of growth and the weather conditions that we have now and what the midterm to long-term outlook is. I think it's a no-brainer for me that we need to move forward on this project now. So, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you got now, or we certainly will talk about it more when we come forward in a couple of months.
Well, Tom, that's a great presentation and no pun intended, a very deep presentation. I've been sitting up here for 5.5 years as a board member representing Cedar Park, and it's amazing how much has changed since 2008 with this. And you know, we have figured out the bureaucratic politics of this. The Water Development Board has authorized us to use the savings from Phase 1 for Phase 2, so we have that capability in place. I don't think anybody envisioned in 2008 that, you know, we would be in a sustained drought, and the fact that that's alarming, by the way, that the lowest level in January in 50 years in Lake Travis. I mean, that's an interesting you know, piece of data. I've toured the water treatment plant twice, and it was about 6 or 7 months between it, and I would encourage all of you to go out there and check that out, because Phase 2 is going to be dealing with some similar terrain type issues, and the diamond drill bit that they drilled into the canyon. So when you take Bullock Hollow toward 620 and you get closer right there, I mean, it's a massive undertaking. They've got a giant crane out there that they had to bring in from the Netherlands. So I mean, it's a huge, very, very complex and large project, and I would encourage you all to go out there and look at it, because it's an engineering marvel, and two, it's a little bit of a taste of what Phase 2 is going to be like for us with the terrain issues. And yeah, if we need to move forward, I know all of our cities are in different financial situations and how we can confront that, but we've got the savings from Phase 1, and so we've got at least an initial capability, a down payment on the future to do that. So, questions, comments, anybody? Yeah, we've experienced a geometric growth, and that's going to continue. I mean, Leander's population tripled between 2000 and 2010. Cedar Park's doubled between 2000 and 2010, and you guys have so much room to grow into that there's no telling what y'all going to look like in 2020. Okay. Any more comments or questions? Thank you, Tom, for that presentation.
Thank you.
And thank you for the OC and that contributed to that presentation. So there's a lot of, we're always looking to the future, and it's another indication of how well our staffs work together. Okay, we'll call up item 8, director closing comments regarding items of community interest.
Just want to say congratulations, Jason.
our newest secretary. And Simon, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome, Simon, and you'll be drinking from another water hose here on this one. Anything else? Okay, we're adjourned.